Imagine this. A billionaire businessman notices a struggling waitress staring at his hand. At first, he thinks it's just curiosity. But then he realizes she isn't staring at him at all. She's staring at his ring. A silver ring with a sapphire stone. And here's the shocking part. It's identical to the one her mother has treasured all her life. What happens after this moment will leave everyone speechless. Maria Alvarez was only 24, but life had already weathered her spirit. She woke every morning in a cramped one-bedroom apartment that she shared with her mother. Rosa, the peeling wallpaper, the leaky faucet, the hum of the old refrigerator, these were the sounds and sights of her life. They weren't luxuries, but they were home. Her days began before the sun had fully risen. She would quietly tiptoe around so she wouldn't wake Rosa, who often spent sleepless nights coughing. The sight of her mother's pale face resting on the worn pillow always tugged at Maria's heart. Rosa had once been strong, a seamstress whose hands could stitch life back into torn fabric, but illness had taken that strength. Now her hands trembled when she lifted a teacup, and her once vibrant eyes grew duller each day. Maria carried the weight of being both daughter and provider. She tied back her hair, slipped into her faded café uniform, and forced a smile into the mirror. Her smile wasn't for herself, it was her shield, her weapon against a world that rarely looked her way. At the café, Maria's day was a blur of clattering dishes, shouted orders, and the endless shuffle of feet. The mornings brought in blue-collar workers, their rough hands gripping coffee cups like lifelines. Students hunched over laptops, sipping on lattes they could barely afford, their eyes heavy with dreams and deadlines. But as the afternoon sun climbed higher, the café transformed. Expensive suits and polished shoes replaced work boots. Laughter that dripped with confidence filled the air. Conversations about investments and property echoed against the walls. Maria served them all with equal grace, though deep down she often wondered what it must feel like to live without counting every coin, despite the fatigue etched into her body. Maria never let kindness slip away from her. When a child tugged at her apron, she'd sneak an extra cookie onto their plate. When she saw a lonely old man nursing his cup of coffee, she'd refill it with a gentle smile and ask about his day. Rosa's words lived in her heart like a song. Kindness costs nothing, but it can change everything. And Maria believed it. Even when her own life felt hopeless. One Friday afternoon, golden sunlight streamed through the café's large windows, painting everything in warm hues. The day had been long, and Maria's feet ached, but she pushed through, tray balanced in one hand, order pad in the other. That was when the door opened and silence rippled through the café. Jonathan Blake had arrived. He wasn't just another wealthy man. His reputation preceded him. Billionaire, real estate mogul, philanthropist, a man whose decisions shaped skylines and whose generosity had built hospitals and schools. But Maria noticed something others didn't. Behind his confident walk and sharp suit, there was a heaviness in his eyes, a loneliness money couldn't erase. He took a seat at one of Maria's tables. Her heart raced, but not because of his status. She had served rich men before. This was different, though she couldn't explain why. With her notepad in hand, she approached, steadying her voice. "Good afternoon, sir. What can I get for you today?" Jonathan looked up, nodded politely, and handed her the menu. And that's when Maria froze, his hand On his finger glimmered a silver ring with a sapphire stone, the same size, the same design, the same scratches etched by time. It was her mother's ring. No, it couldn't be. But it looked exactly like the heirloom Rosa had cherished all her life. Maria's throat tightened. Her eyes flicked between the ring and Jonathan's face. Memories of her mother clutching that very same ring during moments of hardship came rushing back. Could it be connected? Was this man, this billionaire, somehow tied to her mother's past? She forced herself to stay professional, but her heart was pounding Dot, and then Jonathan caught her staring. His brow arched slightly. Is something wrong? His voice was calm, curious, but probing. Maria swallowed hard. She wanted to say something, anything, but the weight of the moment pinned her tongue. This wasn't just a coincidence. She could feel it. That ring was a key, a thread connecting her humble world to his empire of wealth. Dot. This was the moment that would change everything. Dot. Before we continue with this incredible journey, I spent countless hours researching and crafting this story to bring you something truly meaningful. If stories like this touch your heart and you want to see more acts of kindness that restore faith in humanity, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. It means the world to me and helps these important stories reach others who need to hear them. Now, let's see what happens next. Have you ever witnessed an act of kindness that completely changed your perspective? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. Maria's hands trembled slightly as she scribbled Jonathan Blake's order onto her pad. She tried to steady her breathing, but her gaze kept pulling back to the ring on his finger. It was uncanny down to the smallest detail. It mirrored her mother's sapphire ring. The café bustled around them, but for Maria the noise faded into the background. Every second stretched out, as though fate itself had slowed time to highlight this extraordinary encounter. Jonathan noticed her hesitance. "You seem distracted," he remarked, his tone even, but his eyes sharp with curiosity. Maria blinked rapidly, forcing a smile. "I'm sorry, sir. It's just been a long shift." But Jonathan wasn't convinced. Years of high-stakes business negotiations had taught him how to read people. And this young waitress with exhaustion in her posture, but sincerity in her voice, clearly wasn't telling the whole story. Dot. When she walked away to place his order, Jonathan found himself oddly unsettled. Why had she looked at his ring like that? For him, the ring was merely a family heirloom, an artifact of a past he rarely spoke about. But for her, it seemed to mean something more. While waiting for his meal, Jonathan observed Maria. She moved swiftly between tables, balancing trays and smiles with practiced grace. But what caught his attention wasn't her efficiency. It was her kindness. He noticed her slip a chocolate chip cookie onto a child's saucer when his mother wasn't looking. The boy's eyes lit up with delight. She leaned over an elderly customer's table, listening attentively as the man rambled about his garden, even though other tables demanded her attention. She refilled a cup for a construction worker who had clearly run out of change, pretending it was on the house. These weren't grand gestures. They were small, almost invisible acts of kindness. Yet they spoke volumes about who Maria was, a woman with very little to give. Who gave anyway? Jonathan felt a pang in his chest. In his world, generosity was measured in large donations and public accolades. But here, kindness lived in the smallest of moments, with no cameras, no recognition, just humanity. When Maria returned with his food, Jonathan decided to break the silence. "You've worked here long?" he asked, his voice casual. Maria glanced at him, a little wary. "Almost 3 years. It's steady work." He studied her for a moment. "And outside of here? Do you study? Any hobbies?" She hesitated. Customers didn't usually ask about her life. "I take care of my mom," she said finally. "That doesn't leave much time for anything else." There was a softness in her words, a quiet pride that pierced through Jonathan. He nodded, though he said nothing more. As Maria turned to leave, Jonathan spoke again, almost on instinct. "That's a beautiful ring your mother wears. Is it special to her?" Maria froze mid-step. She hadn't mentioned the ring. How did he know? Her pulse quickened as she turned back slowly. "How do you?" Jonathan raised his hand, showing his own ring. "Because I have one just like it." Their eyes locked. For a moment neither spoke. It was as though the air itself grew heavy, pressing down on them. Jonathan saw the confusion and vulnerability flicker across Maria's face. He softened his tone. "Would you mind sitting for a moment? I'd like to hear your story." Maria shook her head quickly. "I can't. I'll get in trouble with my manager." Jonathan waved his hand, signaling the cafe owner, who hurried over, all smiles. "Don't worry, I'll cover her time," Jonathan said smoothly, pulling out his card. "I'd like her to sit." The owner, dazzled by Jonathan's reputation and generosity, nodded eagerly and gave Maria a rare nod of permission. Maria sat down, her heart racing. She had never been invited to talk with a customer, especially not someone like him. Jonathan leaned forward. "Tell me about your mother." "And that ring." Maria swallowed hard, unsure if she should share. But there was something in his voice, steady, respectful, that disarmed her. Slowly she began. "My mom's name was Rosa. She raised me by herself. She used to be a seamstress, but she got sick. The ring, she says it's the only thing left from her family. She never tells me much about it, just that it's important. She holds on to it whenever things get bad. It gives her strength." Her voice wavered slightly, but she lifted her chin, determined not to appear weak. Jonathan listened intently, his fingers brushing the ring on his own hand. "My ring," he said quietly, "belonged to my mother as well. She said it came from a long line of women in our family. She passed it down to me before she—" His voice trailed off, emotion flickering briefly across his face. "I never thought I'd see another like it." Maria stared at him, her chest tightening. 2 rings, identical, carried by 2 families from very different worlds. Could there be a connection? The conversation lingered in the air. Maria's guard, usually so firm, began to lower. She found herself speaking more openly than she had with anyone in a long time. "I sometimes wonder if life will ever get easier," she admitted softly. "But I keep going." "For her." Jonathan nodded slowly. "Strength isn't about how much you carry. It's about not putting it down, even when it feels impossible." The sincerity in his voice startled her. She had expected arrogance or indifference from someone like him. Instead, she found empathy. Maria smiled faintly. "That's something my mom would say." For Jonathan, it was the first genuine smile he had seen from her, and it stirred something inside him, a quiet recognition, as though fate had nudged him toward this moment. What would you do if you discovered someone with incredible strength and kindness living in such difficult circumstances. Would you step in to help, or would you walk away? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. After that first conversation, something shifted. Jonathan returned to the cafe more frequently, always requesting Maria's section. At first, she thought it was coincidence, but soon it became clear he was deliberately seeking her out. Their conversations deepened with each visit. Jonathan shared stories of his travels, the boardrooms he sat in, the deals that shaped cities. Maria listened with wide-eyed wonder, though she never pretended to fully understand that world. In return, she told him about her mother, about the challenges of juggling bills, about the quiet victories of getting through another day. What struck Jonathan most wasn't her hardship, but her outlook. Despite the weight on her shoulders, Maria carried herself with grace. She spoke with gratitude about the smallest blessings, a customer leaving a generous tip, a neighbor dropping off soup for her mom, the simple comfort of a warm blanket. One afternoon, Jonathan watched as Maria carefully tucked a napkin note into a student's bag. "Good luck on your exams," it read with a little smiley face. The boy found it later and returned to the cafe just to thank her. Jonathan was moved. This was a young woman who gave kindness as if it were limitless, even when her own resources were not. For Maria, Jonathan's presence became a strange source of comfort. He wasn't just a billionaire, he was a man who listened without judgment. He asked questions about her dreams, her favorite books, even her childhood memories. Slowly she began to open up in ways she hadn't dared in years, but whispers began to spread. Regulars at the cafe noticed the billionaire's interest in the waitress. Some smiled knowingly, while others muttered cruel things. Maria ignored it, but inside a seed of doubt grew. When Maria told Rosa about Jonathan, her mother's reaction surprised her. Rosa's hands trembled as she listened, her eyes flicking to the sapphire ring she always wore. "Maria," she whispered, "be careful. Men like him, they live in a different world." "But, Mama," Maria argued gently, "he's different. He cares. And his ring, it's just like yours. Don't you think that means something?" Rosa's face darkened, and for the first time Maria saw fear in her mother's eyes. "That ring, it's from a past I left behind. Don't go chasing answers you might not want." Maria fell silent. Her mother had never spoken so firmly, but the mystery only burned brighter inside her. Meanwhile, Jonathan's associates were less subtle. His assistant once pulled him aside after a café visit. "Sir, the press will notice. Spending time with a waitress? People will talk." Jonathan's reply was calm but sharp. "Let them." The turning point came one evening when Maria rushed home after a long shift. She found Rosa collapsed on the floor, her ring clenched tightly in her hand. Panic surged as Maria called an ambulance. Her heart pounding and terror dotted the hospital. Doctors confirmed what she feared: her mother's condition had worsened. She needed treatment they couldn't afford. Maria sat by Rosa's bedside, tears threatening to spill. Her mother reached out weakly, pressing the sapphire ring into her hand. "Don't lose hope, Mia. Promise me." Maria promised, though inside she felt shattered. The next day at the café, Jonathan noticed her red eyes and pale face. "What's wrong?" he asked, genuine concern in his tone. Maria hesitated, but the weight of her burden cracked her composure. She told him everything: the illness, the hospital bills, the impossible costs. Her voice trembled as she confessed, I don't know how much longer I can do this. Jonathan's chest tightened. He had the means to solve this instantly, yet he knew offering money outright would wound her pride. Let me help, he said softly. Maria's eyes widened. I can't accept charity. It's not charity, Jonathan countered. It's kindness. And you've given that freely to others your whole life. Now it's your turn to receive it. Still, Maria shook her head, torn between desperation and dignity. Word spread quickly Maria had been seen with Jonathan again, this time in deep conversation. The cafe owner warned her gently. People are talking. Some think you're using him. The words cut deep. Maria had never wanted anything but honesty and hard work. But the gossip was relentless. Jonathan, too, faced resistance. Business partners questioned his priorities. You're risking your reputation as a waitress? One scoffed, but Jonathan didn't waver. He saw something rare in Maria's authenticity, courage, and kindness, untainted by wealth or ambition. That night, Maria sat at her kitchen table, staring at the sapphire ring on her hand. Her mother's warning echoed in her mind. Don't go chasing answers you might not want. What if Jonathan's ring was more than coincidence? What if it revealed secrets that could hurt them both? She longed for the truth, but she also feared it. As tears slid down her cheeks, she whispered to herself, Am I strong enough for this? Have you ever had to overcome obstacles to help someone you cared about? What challenges did you face, and what gave you the strength to keep going? Share your story below. I'd love to hear your experiences. Jonathan couldn't shake the image of Maria's weary eyes and trembling voice as she spoke about her mother's condition. That night, as he sat alone in his penthouse, overlooking the glittering city skyline, the contrast between their worlds struck him harder than ever. He had wealth beyond measure, yet she had something he lacked, pure resilience and unshakable kindness. The next morning, he returned to the hospital not as a billionaire making a grand gesture, but as a man moved by compassion. He arranged for Rosa to be transferred to a better facility, quietly covering the costs under the guise of a foundation grant. When Maria discovered what he had done, she rushed to confront him. Why would you do this? She demanded, her eyes glistening with both gratitude and pride. I told you I can't accept charity. Jonathan met her gaze calmly. Maria, this isn't about charity. It's about giving your mother a chance to heal. You've spent your life giving kindness to others. Let someone give it back to you. Her lips trembled as she tried to hold back tears. Slowly, her defenses crumbled, and she whispered, Thank you. That moment marked a turning point. Maria began to trust him, not just as a customer, but as a friend, and perhaps something more. Jonathan's actions didn't stop there. Inspired by Maria's unwavering kindness, he began engaging with the café community. One afternoon, he discreetly paid for a group of students' meals, leaving a note signed, From someone who believes in your dreams. On another occasion, he donated books to a local library after overhearing Maria lament that children in her neighborhood lacked access to them soon. Acts of kindness rippled through the community. A customer left extra tips for struggling staff. A neighbor of Maria's offered to help care for Rosa when Maria was at work. The energy of compassion spread like wildfire, all sparked by the small flame Maria had always carried. One evening, Jonathan visited Rosa in the hospital. As he entered the room, Rosa's eyes widened the moment she saw his ring. Her hands trembled, and tears welled up. Where did you get that?" she whispered, her voice fragile but insistent. Jonathan froze. "It was my mother's. She said it had been in our family for generations." Rosa covered her mouth, sobbing softly. "Then it's true. I thought I left that life behind." Maria, alarmed, turned to her mother. "Mama, what do you mean?" Rosa revealed a truth she had hidden for decades. She had once worked as a maid in a wealthy household, the Blake family. During that time, she fell in love with a young man from the family, but their relationship was forbidden. When she discovered she was pregnant, she was forced to leave. The ring she carried had been given to her in secret, a symbol of love and promise that could never be fulfilled. Jonathan's eyes widened. "Are you saying?" Rosa nodded weakly. "Yes, you and Maria, you're connected. Half-siblings." The room fell into stunned silence. Maria's world tilted on its axis. She had gone from seeing Jonathan as a stranger, then as a friend, maybe more, to realizing he was family. The weight of the revelation pressed down on her chest, leaving her breathless. Jonathan sat down heavily, his expression unreadable. For years he had believed his family history was clean, simple, and proud. Now, a hidden chapter had been uncovered, one that explained the uncanny connection he had felt toward Maria from the beginning. Maria whispered, "So that's why our rings are the same. They were never just coincidence." Jonathan nodded slowly. "It seems fate wanted us to find each other." Though shaken, Maria felt a strange sense of peace. The mystery was solved. The connection was real, not romantic, but familial. And with that truth came a new bond, one neither of them could have imagined. Jonathan threw himself into supporting Maria and Rosa, not out of obligation, but out of love. He ensured Rosa received the best medical care, and he helped Maria enroll in night classes so she could pursue her long-forgotten dream of becoming a teacher. Maria, in turn, grew stronger. With the weight of secrecy lifted and the support of her newfound brother, she blossomed. She walked with renewed confidence, her smile brighter than ever. At the café, her kindness became contagious. Customers started small initiatives, from food drives to tutoring groups, inspired by her resilience. Months later, Rosa's health stabilized, and the community gathered to celebrate her recovery. The café was filled with laughter, flowers, and the aroma of fresh coffee. Jonathan stood beside Maria, proud and protective, while Rosa looked on with tears of joy. During the celebration, Jonathan raised a toast. To kindness, the one thing that multiplies when shared. Maria reminded me of this truth, and because of her, my life has changed forever. The room erupted in applause. Maria, blushing, looked around at the faces of those she had quietly helped for years, now smiling back at her with gratitude. Months later, Maria stood outside the café, but this time she wasn't in uniform. She had transitioned into teaching, her dream finally realized. A young student approached, clearly nervous and unable to pay for lunch. Maria gently handed the child a sandwich she had packed. "Don't worry," she said with a wink. "Kindness costs nothing." Jonathan, watching from a distance, smiled. The girl who once struggled to survive was now thriving and giving back more than ever. The ripple effect had come full circle. This story shows how one act of kindness can change everything. What's one way you could make a difference in someone's life today? Challenge yourself and share your commitment in the comments below. Months passed, and life for the Alvarez family took on a new light. Rosa, though still fragile, regained enough strength to enjoy the simple pleasures she once thought were gone tending to her plants. Humming old songs and watching Maria step confidently into her new life. Maria, with Jonathan's encouragement, enrolled in teaching courses, balancing classes, part-time shifts, and caring for her mother wasn't easy, but this time she had support. Jonathan quietly funded her tuition, but Maria insisted on contributing with her earnings too. Determined to stand on her own feet, Jonathan, for his part, found his life transformed in ways money could never buy. He had discovered not just a sister, but a purpose. Instead of building empires of steel and glass alone, he began focusing on building lives, creating scholarships, investing in community programs, and honoring the memory of the mother who had once given him the ring that changed everything. The café, once just a workplace for Maria, became a symbol of connection. Customers often told new visitors, "This is where the story began." And whenever Maria stopped by, people greeted her with warmth, not as a struggling waitress, but as a beacon of kindness at its core. This wasn't just a story of a poor waitress and a billionaire's ring. It was the story of how kindness bridges worlds, heals old wounds, and transforms lives. Maria taught us that even in the darkest circumstances, small acts of kindness matter. Jonathan reminded us that wealth is meaningless without compassion, and Rosa showed us that love, even when hidden by hardship, has the power to shape generations. Their journey proves one timeless truth: when kindness is given freely, it creates a ripple that touches countless lives. And sometimes it even uncovers family where we least expect it. Stories like this remind us that extraordinary kindness exists all around us. If this touched your heart, please like this video. It helps more people discover these inspiring stories. Subscribe for more tales of human kindness that will restore your faith in humanity. And most importantly, look for opportunities in your own life to be someone's unexpected blessing. What act of kindness will you perform this week? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading your stories. Thank you for watching. And remember, you have the power to change someone's entire world, starting with the smallest act of kindness.